as you approached your process automation decisions, where you're going to spend that money,
Yep.
what went into your strategy to do it incrementally, as opposing to just saying, you know what, we're going to go out and we've got $20 million to automate the entire thing end to end?
So I think what's really important to understand is, where we are at Sutro is, what does next 5 years look like? Are we going to continue to grow this plant? Are we going to go and tech transfer some of our key processes to a larger CMO? And so based on that decision, we said, well, what makes the most sense? And where we are right now, it's really the process understanding is sort of the biggest key driver in making sure where we have spent the right amount of money. So a lot of investment has been made into the manufacturing operation in terms of automating certain aspect to understand the data. We've also invested a lot of the infrastructure to make sure that we can support that aspect. How fast can we turn on? So plant capacity is really, really important for us. We have half a dozen clinical products going in and out of the plant. So super important to turn things around faster. So what is it going to take to do that? So investing that amount, for example, a new CIP system, does that make sense to make sure that we can turn things around faster, less intervention from human beings, and fully automation, so fully automated. So those are some of the key things that we ask and sort of map to make the decision in terms of what to invest and what not to invest.
Yep. Okay. Randy, any thoughts on that? Advice for your colleagues on how to approach automation investments incrementally?
Sure. I think, Matt, the key that I always think about is to be good at the basics, okay, and solve your problems. I mean, you can really sort of, in some cases at least, Pareto your problems and say, okay, can I spend 20% of my available funds to solve 80% of my problems? And if you go back to the basics, well, I'm talking things like, okay, if you're an emerging company and you need to get product into the clinic, okay, well, intrinsic to doing that is having GMP capabilities, right? And that means, am I maintaining my equipment appropriately? Is my air and water quality where it needs to be? And how do I monitor and control that in a way to ensure that manufacturing stays off critical path to the clinic? So that's really where I start. Now, when you get down the road and you have success, if you want to implement an EBR, an electronic batch record, or if you want to barcode everything where you have complete traceability from the point you take a sample through a test result, all that is fantastic. But that's not where I would start. I would start on being good at the basics.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. All right. Well, let's take a look at those poll results, Angel. If you could pull those up, take a look there and reflect on, these are hurdles, remember. So what hurdles are affecting your ability to increase automation control in your facilities? Integration of dissimilar platforms. Looks like number one, well tied with implementation and validation timeline. And cost. Cost is right there as well. Randy, reflections on that is, the reason I asked the question about incremental approaches to implementation is because that cost issue comes up, right? Any thoughts on whether these hurdles are in line with reality, or if you look at them and say, no, you know what, we can overcome those. Come on.
Well, I think since we're really talking about early stage and emerging companies, I have to believe cost, honestly, is really what's driving it. I mean, when you look at implementation and validation timelines, yeah, that's true in terms of, well, time is money, as we know, and validation is not cheap, and talent to do that is increasingly difficult to find. So I get that. I would sort of have that as sort of a subcategory to cost. The integration of dissimilar platforms, I mean, in my business, given where we are, that's not really an issue because we're able to build this from the ground up. But maybe that's not true with other companies who are having to deal with legacy systems. So I really can't comment on that.
Yeah. Okay. Paul, anything jumping out at you on this poll?
I guess I always try to recast cost questions as an investment and a return on investment, right? So for all the reasons that Devin and Randy have just spoken about. As they've been on their journeys. I mean, I feel the same way. And I always try to come back to, look, cost is something that we buy today, and the benefit that we get sort of wanes tomorrow. Investment in many of these processes will actually continue to provide a return on that investment. So I think, we probably need to just rethink how we go about justifying that cost and speak in terms that can be understood, right? In a lot of cases, we have sort of, science people or maybe financiers that are, we need to win over. And I think we just need to tell a little bit of a different story as it relates to this, this stuff that many of the folks as part of the session, like, we're the most knowledgeable ones in our company, right? So we need to tell it a little more generically and a little more about a return on investment from a financial perspective. Thus, that cost then turns into an investment on the path forward, as opposed to something that we could live without if we really needed to.